Tobacco brides.
Jamestown, the ambitious dream of the New World, but a far cry from the shining city on the hill. Picture the desperate Englishmen hacking through dense, oppressive brush with one hand, a pipe in the other, their fantasies of gold fading into the suffocating Virginia air. By 1619, the colony was barely holding on. Disease, starvation, and bloody skirmishes with the Powhatan Confederacy had turned it into a grim survival experiment, not the beacon of civilization the Virginia Company had promised. Enter the Tobacco Brides, a practical yet almost absurd solution dreamt up by the Virginia Company. Ship over 144 English women to marry the struggling settlers, with the price tag set at 150 pounds of tobacco per bride. Tobacco wasn't just a crop anymore, it was currency, dowry, and salvation. Forget love, these matches were brokered by cold, hard capitalism. But let's not sugarcoat it. This wasn't some Austen-esque romance. These women weren't stepping off ships with dainty parasols and poetic musings. They were stepping into a battle for survival, an existential gamble where the stakes were nothing less than life or death. Yet, despite the odds, they showed incredible courage and resilience. Jamestown was a mess, a bachelor's haven on the brink of collapse. High mortality, scarce resources, and a lack of family life created a colony that felt more like a chaotic, man-heavy outpost than a functioning society. The Virginia Company, ever the savvy corporate minds, saw the problem and the solution. We need stability, they must have reasoned. Nothing brings stability like families. The remedy? A strategic sale. Come all, lonely gents, for the low price of 150 pounds of tobacco, secure a wife to call your own. Ruthless, yes, but effective. These women were far more than romantic partners. They were investments in the colony's future, a strategic move designed to bring balance to the chaos. And it worked. Families formed. Children were born. The colony began to take root. But let's not pretend this was some Edenic success story. The women weren't exactly scanning Tinder profiles for potential husbands. They were making a grim choice between the known miseries of England and the unknown horrors of the New World. Now let's talk about choice, because that's a tricky word here. These women were marketed as adventurous spirits, willing pioneers chasing destiny. But when you peel back the layers, the truth is far murkier. In 17th century England, women on the fringes had few options. Economic prospects were limited, and social mobility was a pipe dream. You didn't get on that ship unless you were desperate or forced. So what greeted them in Jamestown? A colony where the odds of dying from disease or conflict were about as likely as not. The Virginia Company had essentially turned these women into commodities, bought and sold, marketed like products in a marketplace. But the women weren't passive victims. They adapted, they survived, and in many cases, they thrived, reshaping the social fabric of Jamestown with grit and determination. Take Anne Burris, for example. She arrived in 1608 as a maidservant, married a laborer, and endured unimaginable hardships. Her survival epitomized the resilience these women brought to the table. But let's not romanticize it. Burris and her fellow brides were cogs in a machine built on brutality, their agency largely suffocated by necessity. And here's where things take a darker turn. 1619 was a watershed year for Jamestown. Not only did the tobacco brides arrive, but so did enslaved Africans. It was the beginning of an intertwined history of family building and oppression, where the demand for labor, both voluntary and forced, grew hand in hand with the monoculture economy. The commodification of women was a precursor to the colony's growing reliance on enslaved labor. Tobacco, that golden crop, rested on the backs of both groups. Whether they volunteered or were forced, the economy didn't care about their humanity, it cared about output. So, what do we make of all this? The tobacco brides were both victims and agents of change. Their stories are a testament to human adaptability, surviving against absurd and overwhelming odds. They were pioneers, yes, but they were also pawns in a much larger game, one played by empires and economies far beyond their control. Today, their story resonates in the ongoing debates about migration, labor, and gender equality. The veneer of choice often masks coercion, just as it did then. But there's also inspiration to be drawn. Despite the odds, these women built lives, families, and communities that laid the foundation for what would become the United States. The lesson? Progress is never easy, and it's often paid for by the vulnerable. If we're serious about learning from history, we'd better face the costs and start rewriting the future. After all, history isn't some fixed script. It's a guidebook we're free to edit. So, light up that metaphorical cigar, pour yourself a stiff drink, and raise a glass to the tobacco brides, not as saints or victims, but as real, messy humans caught in the machinery of history.
So, you've endured a slice of the RPTM podcast. We're not saying we aimed to tickle your funny bone, but we wouldn't mind if a chuckle accidentally slipped out. And hey, if we managed to wring a tear or two from those ducts of yours, that's just a bonus. If, against all odds, you found this episode remotely captivating, consider sparing a thumbs upward motion and indulge in the grand gesture of subscribing. Who knows, you might subject yourself to more of our potentially mind-stirring tete-a-tete in the future.